Good evening, East Goshen. Hope you had a great Tuesday. It is late in the evening, and these are turning into late night chats with you all for our Advent reflections. But the last couple days have been kind of crazy here, so this is the only time we can really break away and have a discussion one-on-one, or at least get a space that's quiet enough to have a conversation with you all. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully you were able to wade through Luke 22 today. It is a long chapter at 71 verses, and there is a ton happening. But I want to focus on verses 36 and 37 this evening. And because they're some of the more confusing verses in this entire gospel, and they don't particularly make sense in the context of the discussion that we've been having about peace. So, Jesus is reclining at the Last Supper with his disciples. You can see the communion altar here behind me. He's finished the meal, and he's leaning back with his disciples and asks them, "Did you lack anything when I sent you out before?" He's referring to the sending of the 72, that larger group of disciples, where he commanded them to go out without anything but the clothes on their backs and trust that God will provide. The disciples say, "No, we lacked nothing." Jesus says, verses 36 and 37, "But now, if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. It is written, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And I tell you that this must be fulfilled in me. Yes, what is written about me is reaching its fulfillment." So at the end of the chapter, Jesus is betrayed by Judas and arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's denied by Peter 3 times by the day's end. And so this passage is somewhat confusing given the conversation that we've had about peace, about bringing restoration and wholeness to relationships, and even last night's reflection where we talked about persecution that will come. Jesus tells the disciples, don't worry about defending yourselves. In chapter 21, let me find the verse here. "Make up your mind not to worry beforehand how you will defend yourself." Luke 21, verse 14. So Jesus suddenly calling for swords is really confusing in this context. The Prince of Peace is telling his disciples, go ahead and buy yourself some swords. Forget the cloak. You can be a little cold, but you need to be prepared with a weapon. What's happening here? Why is Jesus talking like this? Does he mean this literally? Because a lot of people want to take this passage out of context. They rip it out of the context of Luke 22. And they read it at a surface level, face value understanding of the text. And they want to make it say something to the effect of, take your pick, gun rights, right to defend yourself, stand your ground type of mentalities, just war theory. I mean, take your pick, whatever your brand of defending yourself or aggression happens to be based on this passage. It's probably a wrong interpretation, because it's not seen within the context of the discussion Jesus has been having with his disciples and what it means given its cultural context. So does Jesus mean go and buy swords? Well, yes and no. He's not telling his disciples that they need to be able to defend themselves from the Romans. I mean, he's already told them not to fight back. Later in this chapter, verse 51, he rebukes Peter for taking one of the swords that is present and lopping off the ear of a servant who is in the garden when Jesus is arrested. He disarms Peter in the moment and tells him that's enough. So clearly he's not telling the disciples they need to be ready for fighting, they need to be ready to defend themselves. So what is he talking about here? The key to understanding Jesus' words is the quotation from Isaiah, where he talks about being numbered with the transgressors. What Isaiah is looking forward to is the suffering servant. He's looking forward to the servant of the Lord who will take on the sins of the people. And so in order for Jesus to be numbered among the transgressors, he needs to be accused and convicted of a crime. The Pharisees have been trying throughout the gospel to find some sort of charge they can bring against him. And in order for a charge to stick, it has to be a serious enough offense. And one of the only capital crimes in the Roman Empire would have been revolution. Jesus needs to be numbered among the revolutionary sects of Judaism. He needs the Romans to view him as someone trying to wrestle power away from the emperor. And so he needs the swords because he needs the charges to stick against him. He is anticipating his own crucifixion. He looks forward to it. He says that it will be fulfilled in him soon. And so he needs the disciples to have swords with him in order for the charges of revolutionary to be sticking. It's one of the only ways that the Romans are going to crucify him. One of the only ways that he can take on the suffering and pain that you and I deserve, but he takes it upon himself. So Jesus needs that so that the Pharisees can level their charges against him and make him stick this time. But Jesus is also telling the disciples in this passage to be ready. He's already predicted persecution in the previous chapter, but he's saying, here and now, I need you to decide. I need you to stake your very life on your claim that you are my follower. Because the days ahead may cost you your lives as well. So be prepared for the road ahead. So this is a confusing passage. But in the context, Jesus is saying, I need this so that I can go take the pain and suffering of the world and conquer sin and death. And I need you to be ready to follow in my footsteps. So, that's what the passage is really trying to get at. He isn't saying literally, go buy yourself some swords so that you can defend yourselves. He's saying, I need to fulfill my mission. The prophecies need to be fulfilled that have been spoken of me since the days of Isaiah. And you as my disciples need to be ready to follow in those sorts of footsteps. The cost of discipleship is so high. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, in his book, The Cost of Discipleship, says that faith in Jesus is one of the only faiths that calls a man to come and die. And in the case of many of the disciples, that means literally. They would be martyred for the sake of the kingdom. So, as you reflect on this confusing passage for today, Jesus looking forward to his crucifixion, ask yourself, have I counted the cost of discipleship? I mean, this is the ultimate cost. Jesus is saying it may cost you your very lives. Am I prepared to follow in the footsteps of the Prince of Peace who takes on the suffering of his people in order that he might bring healing and restoration and wholeness? Can I be the kind of target for the world so that I might take the pain away from someone else? Thank you for joining me. I know this was a bit longer of a video, but this passage warranted an explanation, considering it's one of the more strange couple of verses in this gospel. And I hope I was able to explain it clearly. If not, please send me a message if you'd like to discuss this further. I will see you tomorrow for Luke chapter 23. We are almost done tomorrow and Christmas Eve, and we will be through the Gospel of Luke. Thank you for joining me as always. I will see you tomorrow for the next reflection. Have a great rest of your night.